How'd y'all learn to fight fair
Ah,
after
that
you
was
were
one of the
married?
ones we were talking about.
How you get through your
Forgiveness part.
first argument? Oh,
You know, when you arguing fair, you have to still, you know, you're gonna be you in the flesh because both emotions are very high. Both individuals, of course, the argument is always going to be based on what someone did versus what the other person uh, basically was hurt about what the other person did or what the other person said or whatever it was that took place in the in the marriage. So what you do is that you have to continuously, even though still you in the flesh, you know, you're gonna say, you still gonna say some things that you don't mean. Sometimes you still gonna speak first before you think. Sometimes that's just the way it is. Sometimes, especially when you're caught up in your emotions.
and your flesh.
Yeah, and in your flesh. But afterwards, you have to still be sensitive to the spirit based on your wrong, based on what you did wrong, not what the spouse did or the other spouse did. It always starts with you first, because that's what God our Father does. When you go to God and you're thinking that because of what he done or this your husband has done something to you or said something to you, you have to still go to God about yourself first, because that's what our Father does. Our Father always, he doesn't take sides. That's what you have to remember now. Our Father does not take sides when it comes to marriage. What he does is that because he's requiring both of you be responsible for your own actions and for the things of what you say. In the midst of that argument or disagreement, both of you are going to say some things that are wrong in the eyes of the Father. So both of you are going to say some things out of your mouth that you wish you could have taken back. Okay? But that's why it's so important that when that argument is over, you got to go to God, your Father, about your wrong and what you said. And you have to be sensitive in the Holy Spirit to be receptive, to hear what the Holy Spirit is saying concerning you, concerning what you could have done differently, concerning how you could have responded better instead of reacting. Okay? So vice versa, that husband, he will have to do the same thing. And when both of you do that, because you cannot come back together without first being going before your Father first and really allowing God to show you yourself. You cannot go no further in that marriage, of even in communication, even sexual intimacy, even you talking to each other. You have to first get that thing first before God and ask God, your Father, Lord, you show me what I did wrong, what I can do differently, what things that I can do in a way to where it would make the situation better. And then God will show you you. Okay? And once God show you you, 10 times out of 10, that very individual who's basically the one who was caused or the one who sowed the seed first, that's going to be the one that's going to apologize, whether it be you or whether it be him. It doesn't matter. But that's what being in God or being in a relationship with God in this marriage, when God connect you together, it's not about who wrong or right. It's not about he wrong or she right or she wrong or he's right. It's not about that. It's about both of you learning how to overcome those disagreements. And as what my wife will always say, which I'm totally agreement with, learn how to agree to disagree. In other words, you hear what that person is saying, you understand, even though you may not agree with it, but remember, that person does not belong to you. That person, remember, you have to still remember this, even in the midst of an argument. And I know it's that person belong. That person does not belong to you. That's why you always want to be mindful when you are in the midst of the argument or with your husband, and husbands, you're in the midst of argument with your wife. You got to still remember, even in the midst of that. And I know some of you may say, well, Vito, good gracious, who gonna be thinking about whether or not that person you argue with, that's the God's daughter and that's God's son? I ain't gonna be thinking about that, because right now my emotions right now is on high, and right now I'm fed up with what's going on. I understand that. But after everything is over with, when you go before God, your Father, he will remind you through the Holy Spirit, okay, these areas that you need to work on for yourself. And once you do that, that's when you will learn how to overcome those arguments to the point where it won't get so far out there to where you guys will continually say things that would be very hurtful to each other. Okay, and not only that, let me just say this too as well. When you do come to that point where both of you have admitted both of your wrong, or whoever it was admitted that they did something wrong, okay, let's just say for instance that he was the one that did something that was an offense to you, and you didn't like that, so you got so emotional to the point where you spoke something that was very hurtful to him. Okay, after you guys don't squared all this away, everything is fine, y'all apologize to each other, this and that. Listen, it is important for the person who was the one who got offended. It's important for that individual to show forgiveness to that spouse by action. Not just forgiveness from a distance, but forgiveness by action. Meaning that when you say you forgave him, then you not only need to show him love, but there needs to be some form of embracement. There needs to be some form of grabbing him by the hand, telling him that you forgave him, you kiss him, hug him, because he needs to feel that you have forgiven him. He don't need to just hear the words, but he needs to see it, and he needs to feel it and know that it's okay for him to even say hello. It's okay for him to even say how you doing, because sometimes when a person feels like that they have offended you, they kind of standoffish after that. You know, they won't be so quick to say anything to you. Why? Because they feel like they've hurted you so bad. But it's very important for you, because you got the power to not only to forgive, but also you have the power to show them and put them at ease that you have forgive. So it has to be done by an action. So therefore you guys can continually flow as a husband and wife. So I'm sorry it took so long for me to explain that, but yeah, that was in my heart. Go ahead, babe.
It's not easy, especially when two of you are coming from totally different places and you're trying to figure each other out. For those who are single, for those who desire to be married, understand too, when you get married and you start learning your mate, you start learning each other through, through your father, because he knows, if anyone knows anybody, it's God. God knows both of you guys better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
As you start going on in your marriage, you're going to realize certain things you can't say at that time.
Yeah.
Or you're going to learn how to say what you want to say.
Yeah.
In regards to when to say it. A lot of times we want to say something, but it's not the right time. And if God hasn't given it to you the way that you think, a lot of times the way that God does it is better. Also, know yourself. Like, I'm the type of person, if I'm upset, I want to wait. I want to pray. I want to analyze the situation. I want to reevaluate myself. I want to see what I did wrong. I'm trying to look at the whole aspect. Vito is different. Vito wants to go ahead and get it out there, get it out the way, and let's move on. I'm not like that.
It's typical for a man.
I'm not like that. So respect each other's way of dealing with certain situations.
I had to learn that.
So now he knows,
I can't go to her and say, let's fix this now. I have to let her cool down. I have to let God minister to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
So I just want to throw that out there, because that's very, very important to know that just because you get upset, arguments takes two people.
Sure does.
You can't argue with someone who's not saying anything. But understand, you don't really have to argue, and we try not to. Have we argued? Yes.
Yeah, no, we've been perfect.
Are we trying to minimize it? Yes, especially in front of Divine.
Yeah.
It's just, it does so much damage to the relationship.
It does.
When you argue, because you're not listening. No one's hearing each other. Both of you want to be heard.
Right.
So this way, sometimes God is going to tell you to shut up, don't say anything. And that's going to be the hardest thing to do. But God would, a lot of times, if you pray about it, God will deal with that person.
Yeah.
And there's no argument that has to be.
Yeah.
I've been learning that a lot of times the argument comes from when there's flesh that we have allowed
Yeah.
to creep into the
Right.
relationship.
Exactly.
Either lack of prayer, lack of fellowship
Just
with
not
each
really
other.
thinking before you talk.
Just
Yeah.
being selfish.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely one of the things that she said
That's
some people are
exactly true.
arguing with themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Condemning the other person in their own mind.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. I get real quiet, don't address the issue initially, and end up letting stuff fester and just blow up. I'm working on it. Yeah, please work on that. Just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean you don't talk about it. There is a time when you must talk about it. It's time to sit down and have a conversation, but it's not when you're mad or when you're angry. You just want to make sure that God gives you the word to say, when to say it, and then speak. Sometimes I feel like I have no voice and I'm being heard, so I go into isolation.
That's Tori.
Yeah, Tori.
That's common, even from a male perspective. If a male feel like he's not being heard, he will go into isolation
Absolutely.
too. I think that's an emotional thing that all of us kind of struggle with because we want to be heard. But that's when you have to, like my wife said, you have to be in tune with the power of the power of what your father possessed.
I think one
You know.
time, recently, there was something that was going on with our relationship in regards to there was certain situations that that Vito was going through.
Hey, Linda L.
And God really had to deal with him, but he was dealing with me. And Vito texted me one day and he said, I need you to pray for me. And I said, okay. It was about some situations on his job. And I said, okay. And he texted me back and he was saying all this stuff. And as he asked me to pray for him, I started praying and God was giving me the words to say. I was like, oh, Lord, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. Lord, won't you tell him that? He's not going to receive that from me. And as I was praying, I was like, well, God, just, tell it to him. So I texted him what I felt God wanted me to say at that time. And I said, listen, you ain't got to respond back to me. This is between you and God. After that, I think you called me. Mm-hmm. He called me and he was like, babe, what you think? And I was like, oh. He didn't know this, but I was in my car like, oh, man, please don't ask me what I think. I had already prayed to God, said, God, please don't let him ask you what I think. Please tell him yourself.
Yeah.
But this was one of those times when God wanted me to share with him what he was dealing with me.
I was ready to be receptive
because he was ready to receive it. And God gave me the words to say, how to say it without breaking his spirit, but was really dealing with the heart of the matter because God had already dealt with him. Yeah. So the things that I was saying was really confirmation. Yeah. And just like these videos, it's really confirmation in regards to even with your spouse. And so I just couldn't believe how it worked out, how everything was received. It was amazing. So in all things, even what we talk about from the beginning, let it be God-led. If your relationship starts with the right foundation, continue that. Are you going to miss the mark sometimes? Yes. Yeah. But no, there's a mark that can always be met if you continue to keep God first. Yep. Okay? And it's a growing process. It's a maturity in your marriage. Okay?